Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to be talking about what is quantitative methods, and this is brought to you by the QUADSquad, which is a group of quantitative methods faculty who are interested in increasing recruitment to our field. My name's Amanda Montoya. I'm an assistant professor of quantitative psychology at UCLA. And I started my college journey at North Seattle Community College. And while I was there, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I took a lot of classes in theater, psychology, and math. And I had no idea how to combine those things together until I transferred to the University of Washington and learned a little bit more about statistics and how statistics and math are used in research. And I conducted research in a social psychology lab. After I graduated, I stayed for an extra year as a lab manager in that lab. And then I prepared for my PhD in quantitative psychology. And while I was at Ohio State doing that PhD, I also got a master's in statistics. While I was at Ohio State, my research mostly focused on mediation and moderation analysis, which are two kinds of analysis that are very common in social psychology. So I brought my social psychology background with me, but kind of shifted my focus to more kind of the way that we do data analysis. And then I started at UCLA as an assistant professor in 2018. And as I've been here, I've been building in more meta science into my research, which is the science of doing science. So, what is quantitative methods? We're using this as a kind of catch all term to describe anything that's at the intersection of social behavioral sciences and mathematics, very broadly defined. So, my background is in psychology and math and statistics. And so, I've been able to take what I know about math and statistics and apply it to developing new quantitative methods in psychology. Lots of different researchers in quantitative methods, though, are not in psychology. So, there's a lot of people in education, marketing, sociology. But the main core is that we're developing statistical methods at this intersection of social behavioral sciences and mathematics. So we're using quantitative methods as a very kind of broad catch-all term because when you find these programs, especially at graduate level, they're called a lot of different things. So quantitative psychology, educational measurement and evaluation, psychometrics, social research methods, and oftentimes human development, which is a field that's very focused on kind of how we change over time. And so a lot of methodologists in that area focus on kind of longitudinal research. So the core element, though, is that in all of these fields, we're developing, studying, and applying the research methods and statistical models that drive social behavioral science research. All of the people in these fields are focused on the research methods and statistical models that underlie the research that people do in all of these different fields. So, what do we do on kind of a daily basis? We're developing and applying mathematical and statistical models to answer questions that are critical for substantive areas. So, oftentimes, we'll help with designing research studies, developing instruments to use to measure variables of interest, and then develop, refine, and apply analytical tools to analyze data. And oftentimes, we're also thinking about ways to visualize and interpret data to make it more understandable. It's a little bit hard to say what we don't do because I think we do a lot. One of the most common kind of misconceptions that I hear from students considering quantitative methods is that they say, "Well, I really like doing statistics and I'm really interested in doing social psychology, so I want to do both of those things." And so, one thing that's really important to know is that in almost any of these social behavioral fields, you may use statistics and data analysis to learn about a core research question that's specific to your field. The core thing, though, is that quantitative methodologists don't just use the statistics, but actually develop and evaluate new ways to do statistics. And in fact, the quantitative methodologists are often specializing in a specific type of modeling. So, for example, I do a lot of multi level modeling, mediation analysis. Or some researchers, what they do is they focus on a specific kind of field. So they might say, well, I'm really interested in educational assessment, so I'm going to specialize in a broad range of tools that people use in educational assessment. But the core driving thing here is that quantitative methodologists are driven by this methodological focus rather than a specific applied research question. But ultimately, people vary a lot in this dimension. Even me personally, my background is in social psychology. I work with a lot of social psychologists. I'm very driven by questions about racism and discrimination. And so I find ways to kind of get that into my work. But the kind of driving core of my work is very methodologically focused. But a lot of different people vary in this dimension. And so, what you might want to do if you're thinking about this is to find a mentor or research team that really aligns with your priorities. So, what skills do quantitative methodologists have? Well, we combine training from several different areas, so mathematics and statistics, education, psychology, programming. And the really neat thing to me is that every quantitative methodologist combines these skills in different ways. And so different people are going to have their own little pie chart of how they combine all of these things together. So, as long as the combination of these things are interesting to you, then quantitative methodology might be a great field for you. Who do we work with? Well, a lot of quantitative methodologists work pretty independently. They run their own lab and they train students, graduate and undergraduate students in quantitative methodology. Alternatively, they might work very independently or on small teams, but not necessarily focused on training. There's also collaborative research in our field where quantitative methodologists might find that they're a core methodologist on a large collaborative team, or that they work with many small groups where they split up their time among a bunch of different groups, providing methodological expertise for many different groups. Quantitative methodology is incredibly interdisciplinary, and I find that that's one of the advantages is I like having my fingers in lots of pies, and so this field really helps me achieve that. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is how we kind of differentiate ourselves from statistics, is that quantitative methodology doesn't really exist without the substantive research area. So we have that psychology element, we have that education, anthropology, something like that. Whereas if you're interested in pure statistics, oftentimes you can work kind of void of an application in mind. So, where can you get training in quantitative methods? So, the undergraduate training is quite diverse, where you'd be looking for courses in math and statistics, in maths and statistics departments, but also in your social behavioral sciences department. So, for example, I took classes in a psychology department when I was an undergrad. There are often classes in education and other social behavioral sciences. You'll also be looking for research and data analysis experience, and this will often come from your social behavioral field. And then any type of programming experience that you can get is very, very helpful. So the first programming language that you learn is pretty much always the hardest. And then learning subsequent ones from there just gets a little bit easier. In terms of graduate training, there are both master's and PhD programs, and oftentimes they're housed in a bunch of different departments. So you can find them in psychology, education, statistics, human development. On the right hand side here, I have a bunch of different programs that are available in the US and Canada. At the end of this presentation, I will actually provide a link to a document that provides more information about each of these individual schools. So, what can you do with a degree in quantitative methods? Well, there are academic positions. So, you might work in a kind of research focused position, or there are also teaching focused positions where you're providing the training for new scientists in your field. There's also consulting focused positions. So, oftentimes at big universities, either the medical school or even the university more broadly will have like a statistics consulting office. And people with training in quantitative methods are really, really great for those kinds of positions. There's also positions in corporate government and nonprofit opportunities. So, for example, you could be a psychometrician developing ways to measure things, data scientist who is developing data analysis workflows, and then a data analyst who is actually analyzing data related to a specific question. There's also opportunities to be a product manager or product specialist where you're working with clients to provide software expertise and training. And then there's also opportunities to work independently as a quantitative methodologist. So you can be a consultant, you could establish your own consulting firm where you get to choose which projects you help with. Alternatively, a lot of people do software development where they develop a specific software and then they manage and sell that software to other people. So, if you're interested in quantitative methods, please join us 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Here's a little tiny URL to RSVP, so tinyurl.com/quant methods 2022. At this event, you'll be able to meet graduate students and faculty in quantitative methods, ask questions, and then gain concrete skills from our mini workshops, where we'll be talking about things like developing a research question in quantitative methods, preparing a graduate school application, and preparing for graduate school. So please check out our website, which is linked below, and this will give you access to our wonderful document called Pathways to Grad Programs in Quantitative Methods, which gives specific information about a lot of those programs that I listed below. So I hope that I will see you at our virtual info session, and thank you so much for joining me.